welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing an Arab file. Today we'll be speaking about a number of files, a number of developments that are taking place not only in the Arab world but also worldwide. First we'll be speaking about this Expo 2020 or Dubai 2020 Expo, which is taking place in the United Arab Emirates with the participation of 192 countries. Egypt is part of participants with its enormous, beautiful pavilion that is very much breathtaking, if we can say this meaning, and it aims with its participation to achieve a better future through developmental initiatives, to present the investment opportunities in Egypt, to promote Egypt on all and on different spectrums. We'll be speaking about that. Then we'll be tackling also the G20, which comes at the backdrop of a number of challenges. The top of them is the climate change that will in few days there will be this COP26. Also at the backdrop of the coronavirus, which is really reflecting on the economies of the whole world, and the economy, or how to boost the world economy in order to be able to confront the repercussions of the coronavirus and the challenges that were really threatening the whole world. The last topic would be the Saudi-Lebanon diplomatic row and how Egypt has been trying to play a role in order to control or to put an end or to meddle in this row. We'll be speaking about all three developments because that's what our time will be able to tackle. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
Arab Parliament Speaker Adel bin Abd al-Rahman al-Assoumi hailed President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's decision to end the state of emergency as a culmination of the state's efforts with all its institutions to maintain security and stability. Al-Assoumi further praised the decision as a reflection of sincere efforts and big sacrifices exerted by his sons in combating extremist and terrorist organizations on behalf of the region and the whole world. He confirmed that cancelling the state of emergency in Egypt came as an extension to a number of steps taken by the political leadership that reflected its keenness and determination to achieve stability and realize an integrated development and renaissance in various domains. The Foreign Ministry said on Monday that Egypt was closely following the developments in Sudan. A statement added that Egypt was calling on the Sudanese parties to put the nation's interest into consideration. It noted that Egypt stressed on the importance of achieving stability and security for the Sudanese people. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry stressed on the importance of preserving Sudan's security and stability, saying that Egypt was closely following the developments there. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry stressed Egypt's full support to achieve security and stability in Libya. This came during his visit to Benghazi, where he met with Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar and a number of Libyan leaders. The meeting tackled ways to boost coordination between Egypt and Libya. The head of the High National Elections Committee, Imad Al-Sayih, said that the registration for candidates in Libya's presidential and parliamentary elections should open as of the first half of November. Al-Sayih added that the registration process should open in mid-November when technical and logistical preparations were completed. Wrangling over the constitutional basis for elections, the rules governing the vote, and questions over its credibility have threatened to unravel the country's peace process over the last month. Israel plans to build more residence for Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank, adding to those unannounced in August by the new ruling coalition. The new accommodation adds to more than 2,000 residences, which defense sources said in August would be authorized for settlers in the West Bank. Final approval is expected from the Defense Ministry this week for those homes. About 475,000 Israeli Jews live in settlements in the West Bank, which are considered illegal under international law on land of the future Palestinian state. The Saudi-led coalition fighting in Yemen said that it had killed more than 260 Houthi rebels in the past 3 days near the city of Ma'rib. The deaths are the latest among hundreds that the coalition claimed have been killed in recent fighting around the government's last bastion in northern Yemen.
Right, welcome back. And to highlight the Expo 2020 or the Dubai Expo 2020 and the G20, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister and the Secretary General of the Arab Investors Union. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador Bayoumi.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. And we're speaking here about two important events that are taking place in parallel or that coincidentally have been taking place in parallel. The Dubai Expo 2020 and the G20, which is taking place today and tomorrow. Let me start here first with the Expo 2020 and the Egyptian participation.
Egypt is very keen and interested in show its products all over the world. I remember many occasions Egypt were present, and not only present, but our section in Berlin Fair, for instance, always they win the first prize as the most important and the most presentive show in the Berlin international
exhibition.
So in Dubai, of course, it is a near and dear friend, a dear brother country. And really, I am jealous that we have to do much more concerning the intra-trade between the Arab countries. And in Dubai, we have both dimensions, the Arab relations and the international relations also, because Dubai is becoming really a very important center for international trade. This is important for our trade, but my point, I must be honest to you, and add that we did almost whatever we can do for trade. Now it is time for investment, because 70% of what the Arab countries are importing, we do not produce it. And still we lack this in three areas. Producing of machines, we lack this in the Arab world. Producing of ways of transport and building ships. The third is food. So my advice always to the Arab League countries, whenever we participate, that we have to concentrate on those three dimensions. Building machines, building means of transport and ships, and producing food. And shame on us that we have countries like Sudan, like Iraq, like Syria or Morocco. We can expand producing our food. This is also must be in parallel with the exhibitions and the international fairs and trade exchange. Trade is not enough for the time being, but it is good anyway to have such performance here and there.
But indeed, trade is not enough, and we've been looking for more opportunities for investments in the Arab world and in Egypt. We have followed the speech by Prime Minister Dr. Madbouli there at the Expo, and also we've seen the pavilion, the Egyptian pavilion, and what was exposed or what was presented in this pavilion From your perspective and from this perspective, we're speaking about opening up to investments in the Arab world, particularly that Egypt has exposed the opportunities it has. It has been speaking about opportunities in the Suez Canal. It has been speaking about the opportunities in the Suez Canal economic zone. It has been speaking about different opportunities in different governorates across Egypt. All these were exposed in this show or in this in this pavilion. How do you view the ability of common Arab work, particularly of what we are speaking industrially, or in boosting a kind of mutual investments in mutual economic cooperation?
Yes, here I have good news. The good news that Arabs are one of the largest, if not the largest, investors in Egypt, coming from Saudi Arabia, from Emirates, from Kuwait, Qatar even, they have large investments in Egypt. But the bad news is that it's not enough. The Arabs are investing $1,800 billion abroad and less than $70 billion inside the Arab countries. Why? This must be our homework and duty to find how to attract more and more of investors, especially from the Arab world, because after all, they are our neighbors and brothers. And one of the reasons, of course, or the main reasons, that are we have the capacity to absorb more money in our system? Are we ready concerning the banking system, or make good pieces of land available for those who need land or who need power or electricity? Are we ready for to supply any new investor with trained labor? Many things we lack, and we have to ameliorate it. Then we shall not complain anymore. But still, the Arabs, the good news that they are the largest investors in Egypt, and the bad news that it's not enough and we can double this. And this depends totally on our efforts and the Arab efforts in the whole region.
Right. If we speak about the participation in this expo, which is taking place for a long time, there are 192 countries participating in this expo. How do you view the significance of that? How do you view, how can the Arab really showcase the opportunities that exist in their own homelands, and how this would be a platform for different economic agreements and cooperation?
This is very important, and one part of the free economy is the word knowledge. Without knowledge, you cannot trade, because I have to know what are you producing in order to import it. And this is the task of the exhibitions. It is a permanent daily task of our embassies and our trade representatives. They are in a position to always study what one country like the Emirates is importing. So if we are able to replace their imports, and also what they are exporting in order to make benefit of their exports. This is our work at the diplomacy, whether commercial or diplomats. And of course, the fair trade is very important, but still we need to defend my point of view that we need much more investment in order to produce what we need for Egypt and for the Arab world. But we have the closest relation anybody can imagine with the Arab world, especially with the Gulf states.
Right. At the same time, while this important event taking place at the United Arab Emirates, there is this important, very important summit that is taking place in Rome with the G20, or the group of 20 countries all gathering together in this summit. The agenda of the talks is stopped with the climate change and the global economy, with the absence of two important economic powers, Russia and China. How do you view the G20 this year? How do you view the absence of Russia and China? How are the Arabs monitoring this important event?
As a matter of fact, I always name the G20 as the board of directors of the world economy. This is 90% of the world GDP, 80% or more of the world trade. So it is much important than anybody can imagine. So if we are not participating, we have to listen, and listen carefully, and to see what they are going to decide, because it will affect the whole world. This is the importance of that meeting. Mm-hmm. And of course, they have their own internal differences, but they can have the mechanism also. They have the mechanism to solve their problems. As of Russia and China, this is another story. I always consider it as the world third war. We have a monetary war between the United States from one side and Europe also, and Japan. They all are complaining that China is playing with its exchange rate, and it makes its exchange rate cheaper. The yuan, the Chinese yuan, is presented by 30% less in its value in order to gain more markets. And of course, this is pushing United States to make efforts in order to make the dollar less in value and in the exchange rate. So it is another war, by the way, and I want to give you one example, that during the time of President Obama, in order to make the rate of dollar less, they printed $600 billion extra. And China was complaining about that, so China decided to buy $200 billion more in order to keep the rate of exchange of the dollar in its rate. Mm-hmm. Another war with Russia. They think that Russia is not performing in the trade performance as the international trade law would ask, and there is a sort of a challenge between all of them. But I think that the president of China or Russia, their absence will be replaced by representatives, or by having a sort of a video conference or so on. Definitely. So legally they are there. Yes. Maybe they are not there by...
with this high-level representation.
Yes. Yes. But we can accept this, and maybe this shows you how the conflict is going ahead. But the funny thing that the United States was blaming Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, when we recognized the new China in 1956. Now that China is becoming the most important partner to the United States. This means to us a good message that Egypt's foreign policy was always correct, and those who were complaining about our policy, they follow it after 50 years.
Yes, they had. We had a very long or lengthy vision at that time.
Exactly.
Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister and the Secretary General of the Arab Investors Union, we thank you so much for being with us. This this summit, the G20 summit, which is taking place in Rome, will be taking place today and tomorrow. It comes at the backdrop, or it comes just ahead of the COP26, which is tackling the climate change, and it was very necessary for the group, or it is very necessary for the G20 to take important measures in the climate change file if COP26 was to see any kind of success. We'll be updating you with the developments throughout those 2 days about this issue. Before we move on to our next topic, let's have this quick report and we'll come back for more discussion.
The Lebanese parliament voted to hold legislative elections on March 27th, confirming an earlier vote last week that had been challenged by President Michel Aoun. The vote passed by 77 MPs, put some, including members of Aoun's Free Patriotic Movement who have been against the earlier date, expressed concern around whether quorum was achieved for a second vote regarding the voting of Lebanese living abroad. The body originally voted on October 19th to hold the election at the time, but President Aoun sent the law back for reconsideration on Friday. The March 27th election date would give Prime Minister Najib Mikati's government only a few months to try to secure an IMF recovery plan amid a deepening economic meltdown. Meanwhile, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan have reached a final deal to transfer electricity to Lebanon, which is suffering an acute energy crisis. Ministers from the three neighboring countries said that the World Bank attended a joint meeting for the participating countries and would finance the deal. Lebanese Energy Minister Walid Fayyad said that the Americans have given the green light to the project. In another development, the investigation into last year's port blast that killed more than 215 people, injured thousands, and destroyed a large area of Beirut has made little headway amid a smear campaign against probe investigator Judge Tariq Al-Bitar and pushback from powerful factions. Al-Bitar on Thursday was officially notified of Diab's legal suit, arguing that he did not have the authority to integrate the former prime minister, which automatically forced him to suspend the session. The judge has sought to question top politicians, including former ministers and members of parliament, since July, but nearly all have spurned him, with some raising legal complaints questioning his impartiality. He has been thwarted at every turn in this probe of the August 4th, 2020 explosion that killed more than 200 people and disfigured parts of the capital. Diab was prime minister at the time of the explosion and is among the senior officials Al-Bitar wants to hear as part of his investigation.
Right, welcome back. And Lebanon and the developments in Lebanon, which is seeing very dramatic escalation in some situations. A new government has just sworn in. Before that, Lebanon was in deep crisis, economic one and humanitarian one. We have seen the failure of a previous government to tackle economic issues or to take Lebanon out of its situation. We have seen also the some of the interference by some groups in the political system in Lebanon, which is dramatically reflecting on the Lebanese situation. Egypt has been trying to to end the sufferness of Lebanese and have been trying to aid or to help boost this country, and has already spoken about sending gas or fuel in order to help Lebanon in overcome its crisis. Came the Saudi-Lebanon diplomatic rift to add to the sufferness of the Lebanese people. We have with us over the phone Dr. Sharif Amir, Professor of International Relations. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Right, let me take your reading to the Lebanese situation and developments here.
Well, what's taking place in Lebanon, as you said, it's dramatic. Unfortunately, this country is suffering from this stability and instability in political affairs. We all know that the interference, and let's say it clearly, by Iran through Hezbollah is destroying any hope all over the time. All the Arab states, including the Gulf states, didn't stop aiding Lebanon. We never, including Egypt. We all know that once it happened, the dramatic explosion in August 4th, 2020, Egypt was the first country to send its military medical aid to this devastated country. So all the Arab brothers are standing with Lebanon. So unfortunately, what is taking place now is that there is some, let's say, instability in the minds of several of those who are leading the country. I mean by that the factions of Hezbollah, and I mean by that some statements that were made against Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. So I think that there has to be recalculations. I'm very glad that Prime Minister Naguib Mikati, gave a statement today, very clear and very harsh, and he said it clearly, that we cannot support that Lebanon will be isolated from the Gulf states. I think this is the strongest message that Iran and others could have, and this is very important. So because what happened in the last 24 hours from the Gulf countries suspending their diplomatic relations with Lebanon, I think that it had to be done to show Lebanon that it's time to be serious. Everyone in the Arab League is doing its maximum effort to help this country, and in return, they should show the responsibility towards their own country. So I hope that the statement of Prime Minister Mikati will be the beginning, the real beginning of a true political stability.
Indeed. Indeed, Dr. Sharif Amir, Professor of International Relations, will be tackling this very particular file in an all episode. We hope that things would not then escalate, and we hope that the Lebanese people would put the national interests as a priority to any of their own interests and come all together towards reason. I guess we have to end it here because our time is out, and until next Saturday with another important file, it's goodbye.